Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. Buckle up, what you're about to hear will mess with your head. Let's dive in. The chicken was still frozen. That's the first thing I noticed. I opened the freezer to grab something for dinner, and there it was, not just the chicken, but her wedding ring, perched neatly on top of the box, like some kind of sick garnish. Ice clung to the metal like it was trying to keep it from burning. And then I heard her voice, coming from behind me. "I'm going out," she said, digging through the coat closet. "On a date, actually. Try not to be too jealous." I didn't turn around right away. I think part of me was waiting for a laugh, some kind of gotcha moment. But the silence behind her words was louder than anything she'd ever said. She didn't stutter. She didn't explain. Just a smirk as she pulled on her boots like she was headed to yoga class, not some night with a stranger. I finally turned and said, "A date?" She raised an eyebrow. "Don't act shocked, Hal. You've been sleepwalking through this marriage for years." I didn't know what to say. My mouth opened. Nothing came out. My face must have looked pathetic, because she gave me a quick pity smile and added, "It's not like I'm sleeping with him yet." She left before I could respond. The door clicked shut, and I was still holding a frozen drumstick in one hand and her ring in the other. I sat on the kitchen floor for a while. My feet went numb. I didn't cry, but something broke. Like a thread that had been holding my spine straight suddenly snapped. Later that night, I did something I'm not proud of. I went into her side of the closet. I hadn't done that in years. It was like entering a shrine to a woman I didn't know anymore. Perfumes I couldn't name, shoes with heels too high for someone who used to live in sneakers, a journal tucked behind her scarves. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. The first page read, "If you won't change, I will," starting with my last name. There were dates, names, places, a list titled Options. She'd been planning this, and I'd been a ghost in my own home. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that ring buried in frost, like she wanted me to feel its cold silence before hearing her actual words. I kept flipping through the pages of that journal, each one cutting deeper than the last. It wasn't just rants or angry thoughts scribbled in the heat of the moment. No, it was calculated, structured, color-coded. She had timelines. Emotional detachment, 90% complete. Financial separation, 2 accounts already open. There were sections comparing different men, literally scored like some kind of twisted dating resume. Mark, intense but clingy. Jonah, good car, boring conversation. Theo, confident, doesn't ask too many questions. And next to each name, dates. Lots of them. She'd been out on dates for months. Maybe longer. That whole time I was asking her if she wanted to watch a movie or go for dinner, she was already lining up replacements. The worst part? One section was labeled Triggers to Watch For. Under it, she'd listed things I apparently do that made her want to run. Hal folds laundry too slowly. Talks too much about random historical facts. Never surprises me. Thinks intimacy is forehead kisses. There was even a line that read, "He's harmless." That's the problem. I didn't even recognize myself in her words. It was like she'd written a review of a man she never loved, or one she forgot how to love long ago. When she came back the next morning, I was still sitting in the living room, my body stiff from staying up all night. She didn't sneak in like I thought she might. She walked in bold, keys clinking, and stopped dead when she saw me holding the journal. Her smirk disappeared. "I see you've been reading things that weren't meant for you," she said coldly. I didn't yell. I didn't throw the book. I just asked one thing. "Why didn't you just leave?" She looked at me for a long time, then shrugged. "Because you never asked me to stay, and I didn't think you'd even notice if I left." That broke something in me. Not because it was cruel, but because maybe, just maybe, there was some truth in it. But before she could retreat upstairs, I pulled something from behind the couch. A small envelope. Something I had been working on in secret for months. Not because I suspected this, but because I had started to question everything on my own. It was a manila folder with her name typed on the front. Inside, copies of messages I'd found by accident. An invoice for a hotel room she'd booked 2 months ago under her maiden name. And one photo. One very clear, very undeniable photo. She went pale. And finally, she sat down. She stared at the photo in my hand for a good 5 seconds. Not in shock, not in regret, but calculating. Like she was measuring whether denial was even worth the effort. The silence between us was so dense, I could hear the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen and the faint ticking of the wall clock above our fireplace. I thought maybe she'd cry. Maybe she'd tell me she was sorry. Instead, she slowly tilted her head and said, "Where did you get that?" Not "what is that?" or "how dare you?" but "where did you get that?" No panic, just control. The photo was a high-resolution print, taken on a Tuesday afternoon when she told me she had a dental cleaning. In it, she was holding hands with a man in a charcoal jacket outside of a boutique hotel across town. They weren't just standing together. They were laughing, leaning into each other, her fingers trailing down his sleeve like she belonged there. It wasn't even the betrayal that hit me the hardest. It was how natural she looked next to him. How easy it was for her to live a double life, while I made sure her car had windshield washer fluid and her favorite brand of oat milk was stocked in the fridge. "I didn't mean for you to find out like this," she finally said, placing the journal on the coffee table like it was a receipt. I didn't respond. I wanted her to fill the silence. She sighed and looked toward the window, like she was waiting for something to arrive, maybe an excuse that hadn't been invented yet. "You're a good man, Hal," she said, and I flinched at the way she said it, like I was a nice puppy she'd outgrown. "But you don't challenge me. You don't make me feel disposable," I offered, biting my lip. "No," she said. "Safe. You make me feel too safe." I laughed. Actually laughed. "You're cheating on me because I make you feel safe?" She stood up. "I don't expect you to understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I replied, my voice cracking but still holding firm. "I've been boring you for years. I talk too much about the Civil War. I forget to trim the rose bushes. I gain 10 pounds every winter. And instead of telling me the truth, you turn me into a background character in my own house." She didn't deny it. She didn't have to. Her silence said more than words ever could. That's when I reached behind the couch again and handed her the second folder. This one didn't have her name on it. It had mine. She opened it and found printed screenshots of messages. His messages. The man from the photo. He wasn't just another affair. He was married. And his wife? She and I had already been in contact. In fact, we'd spoken 3 times by then. We had a plan. Her face changed. For the first time that morning, something flickered behind her eyes. Fear, maybe. Or the realization that she wasn't the only one moving chess pieces. "You didn't," she started. "I did." I cut her off. I told her everything. And then I picked up my car keys and walked toward the door. She followed, barefoot on the hardwood, voice shaking now. "Where are you going?" I turned back, staring at the woman I thought I'd grow old with. "To meet the woman your boyfriend swore he'd never hurt." I opened the door, stepped outside, and didn't look back. The drive across town felt like moving through a fog I couldn't shake. Every red light gave me a new wave of nausea, not from nerves, but from the sheer absurdity of where my life had landed. My wife, the woman who once cried watching home renovation shows and insisted we donate to animal shelters every Christmas, had been sneaking off to a boutique hotel with a married man who signed his texts with "See you in heaven" winking face. I should have been angry, furious, but honestly, I just felt hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides and left the shell blinking behind the wheel. When I pulled up in front of the cafe, she was already there. Kara, his wife, the other half of this broken mirror. She looked composed, too composed, like she'd already cycled through the rage, the disbelief, the tears. She was sipping an espresso like we were meeting to discuss real estate. But the moment our eyes met, there was this unspoken connection, not romantic, obviously, just 2 people carrying the same invisible wreckage. We didn't shake hands. We didn't need to. She slid a manila envelope across the table as I sat down. "He thinks I'm visiting my sister," she said quietly. I told her I'd be there by noon, so we have 40 minutes. Inside the envelope were photographs. Copies of the same hotel location, only different nights. One showed Lorna in a red coat I'd bought her for our anniversary, arms wrapped around Kara's husband like she was afraid to fall. Another showed them entering the building, laughing, like this was just some romantic movie they'd cast themselves in without asking the rest of us. "I found a second phone in his gym bag," Kara continued. "He uses it for her." I backed up everything. Texts, voice memos, photos. Some of the things they said. She paused, her jaw tightening. It wasn't just an affair. It was a fantasy life. They talked about running off, opening a winery in Oregon, leaving us amicably so they could look like the victims. I almost laughed again. That dry, pathetic kind of laugh that comes from knowing you've been cast as the villain in someone else's twisted little daydream. We started swapping details. Timeline confirmations. Expenses that didn't add up. Weekend trips disguised as business conferences. Her husband used their joint card to buy a bracelet for Lorna, engraved with the word uncaged. I felt my stomach turn. He used their anniversary date for the engraving. They've been at this longer than we thought, Kara said, leaning in. At least 10 months. Maybe more. That's when I showed her something I hadn't shared with anyone yet. A spreadsheet I had quietly built over the last week. Every odd receipt. Every appointment that ran long. Every day Lorna claimed to be somewhere, but left a digital footprint somewhere else. She stared at it for a few moments and said, "How? This is enough to destroy them." I shook my head. I don't want revenge. I just want to stop being the fool in someone else's circus. But she did. Kara wanted revenge, and she didn't hide it. "I'm not burning everything down," she said, her voice flat. "I'm just handing them the matches and letting them watch it fall." Before we left, we made a plan. Not just for confrontation, but for exposure. Calm, legal, undeniable. We would pull the thread and let them unravel themselves. No shouting matches. No revenge posts. Just precision. As I walked back to my car, I got a message from Lorna. Just one line. "You left the heater on. Don't forget the bills due Friday." No apology. No explanation. Just life as usual, as if her affair was a minor detour in her week. I stared at that message for a long time. She didn't know that her whole little fantasy world had just been quietly, methodically rigged to collapse. And I wasn't going to stop it. For the next 4 days, Lorna acted like nothing had changed. She hummed while making tea, scrolled on her phone beside me on the couch, even asked if I could pick up almond milk on my way home from work. Meanwhile, every moment she wasn't looking, I was watching her. Every tap of her screen, every smirk she thought I didn't catch, I saw it all. She thought I was too passive to do anything. That was her mistake. Kara and I had planned the exact moment everything would hit. We agreed. No drama in public, no screaming, no scenes. Just quiet exposure. Calculated chaos. It would all start with a dinner invite. Lorna loved hosting dinner parties. She'd done it for years, using them as an excuse to curate her image. Always the perfect wife. Elegant, funny, in control. So when I casually suggested we invite a few friends over for a small Friday night dinner to reconnect, she lit up. She thought it was my way of trying to win her back. Maybe even that I was starting to accept her little side quest for excitement. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice almost coy. "You're finally feeling social again?" "I'm trying," I said with a small, pathetic smile. She bought it instantly. We invited 4 people. 2 old couple friends she hadn't seen in months. People who still thought we were the perfect match. And Kara and her husband, under fake names, pretending to be friends of mine from work. Lorna didn't know them by face. Just a few mentions, vague references over the years. She nodded along when I mentioned who was coming, distracted by whatever she was texting under the table. Friday arrived. The house was spotless. Candles, wine glasses, ambient jazz. Lorna looked like she'd stepped out of a home magazine. She wore that same red coat I'd seen in the photos, the one she wore while wrapped around someone else. I said nothing. The guests arrived. First the 2 couples, laughing and handing over a bottle of wine like nothing was brewing beneath the surface. Then Kara and him. Theo. That was his real name. He walked in with a practiced smile, holding Kara's hand, completely unaware of what he'd just stepped into. The second Lorna saw him, she froze. Her wine glass tilted slightly in her hand. Not enough to spill. She was too good for that. But her entire face drained of color. I watched her eyes bounce between Theo and Kara, her mind scrambling for an explanation. She looked at me, confused, maybe even a little scared. I just smiled. A slow, quiet, empty smile. "Lorna," I said warmly. "You remember Theo, right? He's in accounting. And this is his wife, Kara." Kara stepped forward, extending her hand with a smile that could cut glass. "So lovely to finally meet you." Lorna didn't move. The rest of the evening was a slow-motion car crash. Kara played it perfectly. Theo, now sweating bullets, couldn't keep his hands from shaking as he poured himself wine. Lorna barely touched her food. And I acted like nothing was wrong. I made jokes, passed the salad, smiled as if my entire marriage wasn't balancing on a wire above a pit of humiliation. When dessert came, Kara stood. We brought a little something to share, she said, reaching into her bag. Out came a small stack of papers and a single USB drive. She placed them gently on the table between the wine bottle and the cheesecake. Lorna stood up so fast her chair tipped over. I think I've lost my appetite, she said, grabbing her purse. But she didn't get far. Theo grabbed her arm. He whispered something harsh and low, too quiet for the rest to hear, and she yanked herself away from him like he was poison. Then she turned to me. What the hell did you do? She hissed. I stayed seated. Calm. Collected. Nothing you didn't start. She didn't respond. She couldn't. She walked out. Not a word to our guests. Not even a glance back. And as the door shut, I finally exhaled. The silence after she left the house was unlike anything I'd ever felt. Not peaceful. Not empty. It was the kind of silence that hums in your ears like the aftermath of an explosion. Kara calmly gathered the documents from the table, sliding the USB back into her purse while the other guests sat frozen, unsure if they had just witnessed a real-life drama or some twisted experimental theater. One of the women awkwardly muttered something about needing to check on the babysitter, and within 5 minutes, everyone had politely but hastily vanished. Kara lingered just long enough to place her hand on my shoulder. She won't bounce back from this easily, she said quietly. Neither will he. Then she left, and I was alone, truly alone, in the ruins of my carefully arranged living room, with half-melted cheesecake and a shattered illusion. I didn't clean up that night. I didn't even take off my shoes. I just sat on the couch, staring at the red wine stain on the tablecloth, right where her fingers had trembled when she realized she'd been cornered. That stain was the first honest mark she'd left in our home in months. The next morning, I woke to the sound of keys fumbling in the lock. For a split second, I thought maybe it was her. Maybe she had come back to fight, to apologize, to cry. But it wasn't. It was her sister, Melody. She barged in without knocking, holding a duffel bag and wearing that holier-than-thou expression she always saved for me. Where is she? She snapped. She ran, I said, not bothering to stand. Somewhere between dessert and confession. Melody dropped the bag by the door. She's not answering her phone. What the hell did you do to her? I raised an eyebrow. Do you want the short version or the illustrated one? She looked confused, like I was speaking a language she didn't understand. And maybe I was. Maybe integrity is a foreign dialect to people like them. She stormed upstairs, shouting Lorna's name, as if she might be hiding under the bed or inside the closet. She's gone, I repeated. She's not coming back. She knows what she did. When Melody came back down, she was holding the ring, the one from the freezer. She stared at it for a long time before finally whispering. She didn't mean for it to go this far. I laughed. She had a spreadsheet, Melody. A literal spreadsheet of escape routes and backup plans. She meant for it to go far enough that I'd break first. She said nothing, just left, quietly this time. And once again, I was alone. Later that day, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me press accept. Hal? Her voice came through the line, small and shaking. I didn't speak. I just listened. I didn't think you'd actually go through with it, she said. I thought you'd just mope and forgive me. Like always. You didn't know me at all, I replied. She was quiet for a moment, then added, they're all messaging me now. Everyone from that dinner. Even Kara. What do you want from me? To beg? No, I said calmly. I just wanted to stop being invisible. She tried to speak again, but I hung up. There was nothing more to say. That night, I started packing. Not because I was leaving, but because I decided to reclaim the space. Every shelf, every drawer she once filled with her curated little lies, I emptied them. I boxed up her things, not in anger, but with the precision of a man who was finally awake. In one of the drawers, I found a sealed envelope with my name on it. No date, no note. I hesitated. Then I opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper with 7 words, handwritten in her perfect cursive. If you ever find this, I'm sorry. But even that was a lie. That envelope haunted me more than her betrayal ever could. Not because it was heartfelt. It wasn't. It was timed. Planted. A safety net she left behind in case her grand escape ever fell apart. Those 7 words were her insurance policy. Her twisted way of controlling the narrative if I ever decided to grow a spine. If you ever find this, I'm sorry. No explanation. No ownership. Just enough to muddy the water if she ever needed to say, but I tried. I didn't tell anyone I found it. Not Kara. Not my friends. Not even Melody, who had since texted me once with, "She's at mom's. Don't come." Like I had any intention of following her. I was done chasing a ghost. Instead, I kept moving, one drawer at a time. I made trips to donation centers, boxed up her designer books and throw pillows, and deleted her curated playlists from our shared smart speaker. I didn't blast angry music or tear the place apart. I just removed her, carefully, deliberately, like performing surgery on a wound that refused to close. Then, about a week later, the letter arrived. Handwritten. No return address. Just my name. I didn't open it right away. It sat on the counter like a ticking bomb. I stared at it for 2 hours before finally tearing the seal. Inside was a 5-page letter. Not typed. Written in her familiar, looping script. She apologized again, but this time it wasn't vague. It was confessional. Ugly even. She listed every detail. When it started, how it escalated, how I made it easy to betray someone so stable, because I never fought back. She even confessed to using one of our vacations as a cover. They met in the city while I took a nap back at the hotel, convinced she was at a museum. She ended it with, "You didn't deserve this, Hal. I thought I needed more. But the truth is, I was just too small to handle someone like you." For a moment, I felt validated. Not comforted, not forgiven, but seen. She'd admitted it wasn't about what I lacked, but what she never developed. Emotional depth, loyalty, maturity. Still, I didn't reply. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer I now kept locked. It wasn't forgiveness. It was evidence, proof that I hadn't imagined the whole thing, that I wasn't crazy for seeing the cracks long before they became a collapse. A few days later, Kara invited me out for coffee. I was hesitant at first. Not because of her, but because I wasn't sure what our dynamic even was now. We were allies, not friends. Partners in exposure. But sitting across from her at that small cafe, I realized something. She looked lighter. Freer. Like someone who had just finished a long sentence in a prison no one knew she was living in. "You okay?" she asked, sipping her latte. "Getting there," I replied. She nodded slowly. He moved out. Tried to say it wasn't real. That Lorna manipulated him. I didn't even waste energy arguing. We sat in silence for a while after that. But it wasn't awkward. It was safe. "Do you ever miss them?" I asked without meaning to. She tilted her head. "I miss who I thought he was, not who he turned out to be." That night, I walked past the mirror in the hallway and stopped. For the first time in a long time, I didn't see the guy who was cheated on, humiliated, ignored. I saw someone rebuilding. And then came the second knock on my door. It was late. Too late for deliveries. Too early for trouble. When I opened it, she was standing there. No coat. No suitcase. Just her, and a single photo in her hand. She stood there like she expected me to melt. Same red lipstick. Same practiced sad eyes. In her hand was a photo of us from a few years back, smiling, arm in arm, standing in front of the lake where we used to camp every summer. She held it out to me like a peace offering, like that single frozen memory was supposed to undo everything. "I found this in my old coat pocket," she said softly. "I don't know why I came here. I couldn't stop thinking about what we used to be." I didn't take the photo. I didn't even look at it. "You should have thought about that before turning us into strangers," I said. Not angry, not spiteful, just done. She opened her mouth, probably to launch into one of her monologues about self-discovery and emotional depth, but I stopped her with a simple gesture. "I'm not the same man you left, Lorna, and you're not the same woman I married. You walked out for someone who made you feel alive. I walked away so I could finally breathe." She looked like she didn't know whether to cry or scream, but it didn't matter anymore. Her choices weren't my responsibility to soothe. "You don't hate me?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "No," I said truthfully, "because hating you would mean I still carry you with me. I don't." I didn't slam the door when I closed it. I just shut it quietly, firmly, finally, and that was it. Weeks passed, then months. I started over, slowly. I joined a local history club, started hiking again, spent more time with people who actually listened when I spoke, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. One day, I found myself standing in front of that same lake from the old photo. Alone this time. I skipped a stone across the water and realized I wasn't mourning anything anymore. I was just living, not waiting for the other shoe to drop, not chasing closure, just standing in the sun, breathing air that finally felt like mine again. Sometimes the ending you never wanted turns out to be the beginning you always needed. Thanks for watching Reddit Confessions. If you've ever lived through something that broke you but ended up freeing you, share it in the comments. And for a fun twist, tell us, what's one event in world history you wish you could have witnessed firsthand? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more real stories with unexpected endings.